just be thinking about, in your relationship with Christ, what type of lover am I? Am I the selfish lover? Am I the only one who is, I'm always taking from God, but I'm never giving anything back? You know, am I the controlling lover? Am I the, what else was it? The passionate lover? The loyal lover, because Mary was super loyal. She was very faithful. So just be thinking about some of those things as we go through this. And some questions that we kind of wanted to ask ourselves as we were going through it, since it is Women's Month, is what does Mary Magdalene symbolize for women? What did God want us to learn from her? Because I believe that Mary wasn't just a regular woman. She did so much, but I feel like there's so much that we can learn from her, and I believe that she symbolized just... We're going to go through. So Mary had many roles, and so we're going to kind of just review some of the roles that Mary had, just because we've been studying Mary since the beginning of this month, but, you know, obviously you kind of forget some of the things. So we kind of just want to go through some of the roles of Mary and dig into some of the other roles that we may have not gotten to in the past. And so we knew that Mary is a very faithful servant, and she pretty much probably had the right motives, because it really didn't matter who was looking at her, but she had the right motives when it came to serving. Number two, Mary was a friend and she was a leader. She was very well connected, and the accounts of Mary, she was mentioned 14 times, but 8 out of those 14 times she was mentioned in connection with other women. So we know that Mary was probably, she understood the need and the importance of a community of women. She knew that she couldn't do it alone, but she knew that, you know, I need other women with me, and how strong it is to just have a group of women, how powerful it is to have a group of women together. And I think that's important for us, and that's something that we can learn from, just because I feel like a lot of women, we have the reputation of just not getting along with other women. And I think that the reason why Mary was probably so approachable and relatable was because Mary knew what she went through. You know, Mary had been delivered from 7 demons. They call her the Mary Magdalene, the one who was casted, who had 7 demons casted from her. So I believe that when people saw her, they saw her as, you know, just relatable. I can relate to you. I know that I see you walking with Jesus now, but I know that you've been through something. So I know I can come to you and not feel judged as a woman. Yeah, I think that she was very relatable. I think that sometimes we can kind of approach women and judge them off of where they are in their season with God, when we really should be reaching out to them, letting them know, listen, I've been saved from that. I've gone through that, and God has helped me through that. And instead of kind of like just looking at our differences, because we are, you know, we have different personalities, even within our ministry, Esther, we see that sometimes we kind of like clash with different things just because we have really bold personalities, and, you know, we're just different people. But the thing that really kept, I believe, Mary and the other women that were with her together is because of their relationships and the experiences that they had with Jesus. So they knew that no matter how different we are, listen, we have this one thing in common, and that's our relationship with God. That's what God has brought us through. So I believe that that's probably one of the reasons why Mary was such a great leader, and she was such a great friend. Number 3 is Mary was a boss, okay? She had resources. The scripture reference that we can learn from is Luke 8:1-3. It says, "And it came to pass afterward that he went throughout every city and village, preaching and showing the glad tidings of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, and certain women which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna the wife of Chusa, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others which ministered unto him of their substance." So the Greek translation of substance means property, possessions, or goods. So for a woman at this time to be able to hold property, possessions, and goods, and not to have a husband, the only one who had a husband at this time was Joanna. So all the other ones were pretty much independent with their wealth. They got it on their own. And so when I studied this, that was not puzzling to me, but I wanted to learn more about the jobs that women had in the Bible. So when it comes to Mary, a lot of people thought that since she was from Magdala, that and it was a center for textiles and wools and dyes, that's probably what her trade was. But there was many other women who were working women in the Bible who had really impressive backgrounds when it came to, you know, just the way that they made money. So the first one that I wanted to kind of just talk about was Lydia. And I don't know if you guys ever heard of Lydia, but in Acts 16:14 it says, "A woman named Lydia from the city of Thyatira, a seller of purple fabrics, a worshiper of God, was listening, and the Lord opened her heart to respond to the things spoken by Paul." So when it comes to purple fabric, purple was seen as a sign of nobility and royalty. So obtaining purple fabric, wasn't cheap. It was expensive. So Lydia was probably a pretty wealthy businesswoman. And Priscilla was the second one, and she was a tent maker with her husband. I believe her husband's name was Aquila. But during that time, it said that the Roman Empire needed leather tents for their military. So she probably had a lot of money too, because she provided for a need. And I love her story because she was not only just a wife, but she was a businesswoman. She was a traveling evangelist, and she was a church planner, because Paul actually found her and her husband, and and she took them in. The next one that I found that was really impressive to me was Sarah. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but she was actually the builder of cities. And not just one city, she was the builder of 3 cities. And we know how hard it probably is to plan and prep for building a house, but to build a city is it's a pretty great thing. But she was a little bit about her. She was the daughter and the descendant of Ephraim, the son of Joseph. And her name meant the remaining or the remnant. And kind of how she got that name in 1 Chronicles 20:7, it says the sons of Ephraim. I hate reading the genealogy just because it's like the words are so hard to pronounce. But it says Shetillah, whose son was Bered, whose son was Tahath, whose son was Eliadah, whose son was Tahath, whose son was Zabadab, who were born in the land, were slain by the inhabitants of Gath because they had gone down to take away their livestock. But basically it says... And their father Ephraim mourned a long time, because basically all his sons had died. But after his kinsmen had come and comforted him, he visited his wife, who conceived and bore a son whose name was Brea, since evil had fallen on his house. And he had a daughter, Sarah, who built upper and lower Beth Horon, which meant the house of freedom, and Uzan Sarah, which meant listen to the remnant. So pretty much I thought that she was making a statement with the cities that she built, because she was the last of her siblings. She was the remnant. She was the remaining of her people. And also it talks about how there was perfumers, cooks, and bakers as women in the Bible. And the last thing that I kind of want to talk about when it comes to how women were working was Proverbs 31. When it talks about the virtuous woman, it says that she seeks wool and flax and works willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night, and gives meat to her whole household and a portion to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hand she plants a vineyard. So this really got me hyped, because I was just like, okay, well, since for a long time women have been trusted with the role of many things, and we've known how to do them well, because it says she wakes up early, she wakes up while it is yet still night, and gives meat to her household. So she was also a provider of her household, and she gave a portion to her maidens, which probably means that she was in a position of authority. And it says she considers a field and buys it. So she knew about investments, and with the fruit of her hand she plants a vineyard, meaning that she knew how to multiply what was given to her. She knew how to invest. So that just stood out to me.
So in addition to what Brea said about Mary being a servant, a leader, and a boss, Mary was also a lover. And so we noticed when we gave you guys that activity and asked you to explain what you thought that type of lover was, you all were kind of like, what are we about to talk about? You're talking about loving and all that type of stuff. So when I looked up lover, the first definition I got was a person with whom one has sexual relations, obviously. But there was so many other definitions for lover, and some of the ones that I found that I really liked were an affectionate or benevolent friend, a person who greatly enjoys something or someone and has great affection for that something or someone, a person who loves, especially a person who has or shows a warm and general affection for others, and one who is fond of or devoted to something. And when we look at Mary, she meets all of those as far as being a lover. So she was a lover of Christ. And we're not at all talking about in a sexual sense. So it's safe to say when we're explaining her relationship to Jesus that she was a lover for him. And when you think about, him casting the 7 demons out of her, that changed her life. She she must have really loved him. She really must have believed in him to give her time, her resources, her energy, and must have known that he was the real deal, not just some other prophet, to dedicate her life to this man and to his cause. So I'm sure that after she witnessed his healing of other people, that furthered her affection and deepened her relationship with him. So just her deep desire to be close to him and not just know him, but be in relationship with him. So she was with him for a long time. She spent a lot of time with him. So I'm sure she knew what his favorite food was because she was preparing food. I'm sure she knew his daily schedule because when you spend that time with someone, when you are in relationship with them, when you love them that deeply, you know them well. We see her love for Christ and her relentless determination to get to Jesus. And not just Mary, but we see that in the other women as well. So when I read Mark 16, 1 through 3, it really kind of made me... So it says, and when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Salome had bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. And they said among themselves, who shall roll us away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? So as I was reading that verse 3, it kind of made me laugh because I'm picturing this in my mind. They've got their spices, they're making their way to the sepulchre, and all of a sudden they just stop and they're like, well, who's going to roll away the stone? And you have to think they're probably still mourning, they're crying, very much in distress because Jesus has just passed. So you might think that they're not quite thinking logically, and it's like obviously the stone was still in front of the tomb. So they could have been thinking, well, why are we even making this trip? Why are we even going? What is the point? But they had that determination and they kept going, even though they knew that the stone was supposed to be still over the tomb. They continued and nothing got in the way of them getting to their Lord, even a stone that probably weighed over a ton. So after reading that, it was humorous and inspiring, but it was also very convicting because I'm thinking, for myself and how many others, how often do we let obstacles get in the way of us getting to Jesus? And how often do we lose motivation towards something that we really want or lose motivation towards what we know that God has called us to do because of an obstacle that seems so insurmountable, like a stone over a tomb that we know that we can't move. So it's like, I'm sure they were thinking, we might as well just go back home. It's still early. Let's go get some breakfast. Let's plan out the rest of our day because it is pointless for us to go. This stone, the tomb is covered. Why are we still going? But like Brea said, ride or die. They could have easily said, let's go back. But they knew they had a job to do, and by golly, they're about to do it. So they kept going. By golly, they're about to do it. And so I just loved how bold and determined these women were. And it reminded me also of the woman with the issue of blood in Matthew 9, 20 through 22. It says, and behold, a woman which was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years came behind him and touched the hem of his garment. For she said within herself, if I may but touch his garment, I shall be whole. But Jesus turned him about, and when he saw her, he said, daughter, be of good comfort, thy faith hath made thee whole. And the woman was made whole from that hour. And I like how Mark's account says how she was healed. It says, for she said, if I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up. So instantly, immediately, with the quickness, God honored her faith. God honored her faith, not allowing any obstacle to get what she needed from Jesus. This woman had been bleeding for 12 years. She had gone, it says in Mark 5:26 through 27, she had gone to many physicians. She had undergone many treatments. She spent all that she had and she only got worse. So I'm sure she was like, what else do I have to lose? Let me go to this man who I've heard about. And that's what I like. It says when she heard of Jesus, she came in the press behind and touched his garment. It didn't say that she saw him. It didn't say that she already had a relationship with him. All it took was for her to hear of this man, for her to want to get to him. She had to get to Jesus. So her faith was huge, and we see that God honors that big faith. So back to Mary. She was a lover of Christ, and we see that in everything that she did for him. She refused to let anything get in the way of getting to her Lord. We even see that in the way that she mourns for him. I love when a woman is grieving, they sit in that grief. When you truly love something, when you truly care about something, have a high regard, a high affection for it, it's not just, oh, they're gone, let me go about my day. You sit in that. and she stayed. Had she not stayed, she would not have been the first person that Jesus revealed himself to, but he knew that she was going to stay. And so I believe that's why he honored her faith.
So I love in the verse John 20:16 where basically Mary is arguing with Jesus, and because she doesn't recognize Jesus for who he is. And she's basically like, listen, if you took his body, because she thinks he's the gardener, then bring him back. But it made me think about like, okay, well, why didn't Mary recognize who Jesus was? Because again, they had a relationship. They walked with each other. They talked with each other. So I'm pretty sure she probably recognized his voice, but she didn't. And maybe, and I have some factors of why she probably didn't realize who Jesus was until he called her name. But number one, Mary was really, really distraught. She was crying for a while. Remember, she was the first person who was at the tomb to see that Jesus was not there, but the two disciples, and she told the two disciples that Jesus wasn't in the grave anymore. And even after Peter and John went, and they said that John saw the grave and he instantly believed. I'm pretty sure he probably came out and saw Mary still sitting at the tomb and Mary was still weeping, and he's like, Mary, listen, why are you crying? And then she looks down and she sees the angel, one at the head and one at the foot, and they're asking her the same question, Mary, why are you crying? And then when she looks over and she sees the gardener is asking her the same question, Mary, why are you crying? So I'm thinking she's probably crying for a while and probably completely distraught, and maybe that was one of the factors why she couldn't recognize Jesus. The other one was Jesus probably didn't look the same. Jesus was coming in a different form that he had never come before. We don't know what he looked like after the crucifixion, but I'm pretty sure he did not look the same. And Jesus was coming in a different way, obviously, so we don't really know what he looked like. The third point is, if Mary saw Jesus die, like if you saw somebody die, you probably wouldn't be thinking that you're literally talking to the person that you've seen. You know, I seen him buried. I seen him nailed on the cross. I seen him go in the tomb. So why would I think that? So why would I think that I'm talking to Jesus? But at the same time, maybe her expectations were low because Jesus told them what was going to happen. So I think Mary kind of shows us that you can walk with God, you can have a relationship with God, but still suffer with that spirit of disbelief. And a lot of times, you know, we go through seasons where we don't see God, we don't see him there, and we'll cry out to him and ask God, why aren't you here? Or, you know, just where are you? And God's just like, I'm there. I'm doing exactly what I'm doing. And the reason why she didn't see Jesus was because he was going to get the keys to death. So, I think that maybe that was one of the reasons why God was asking her, Mary, why are you weeping? Because I told you what was going to happen. And I think that's the same thing that God tells us a lot of times, you know, why are you weeping? I told you I was going to provide for you. Why are you weeping? I told you that you were going to live and not die. Why are you weeping? I told you that you were going to have life and life more abundantly. Why are you weeping? Because he knew exactly why Mary was weeping, but I think he was just like, Mary, why? Why, Mary? We had this conversation. Like, what's wrong? And then also, I think you just have to go back to, what did God say? There's a lot of times that we will not see, that's why we have to walk by faith and not by sight, because there's a lot of times where we will not see the things that God has spoken over us, but we have to remember, what did God say? Sometimes you have to go back to your journals, just look over what he said to you in moments where you were very confident in the word of God. What did he say? And going back to the verse in John 20:13-16, where he says Mary's name and Mary realizes, okay, this is Jesus. She says, Master, Rabboni. So in that moment, what was so special about God calling the name of Mary that she recognized finally who he was? Because again, they had a relationship. And what I'm thinking is that there was something about the name. There was something about her name when he called it that was just familiar to her, because she had a relationship with him. It was a personal relationship with him. It wasn't about anybody else's relationship, but when he called her name, she was just like, I've heard this before. This sounds familiar to me because I know Jesus. And I think that it just goes to show that you can't rely on other people's relationship with God or what other people have told you. You can't rely on the relationship that our pastor has with God. You can't rely on your relationship that your grandma has with God, or that your mother or your father have with God. But it has to be your relationship. It has to be something personal, because it would be a sad thing to be in the room with Jesus and not know who he is, because you don't know him, because you don't have a relationship with him. And it's sad, but there's so many times when I'll go in the sanctuary and I'll see people just sitting, and I'll be like, listen, if you only knew that Jesus was sitting right beside you, Jesus is in the room. If you only knew it, but you have to have a relationship with him to recognize him, because there's so many times when he is in our circumstance, when he is in our situation, but because we don't know him, we don't see him for who he is. So yeah, you have to have a relationship with him. And I love
That's it, Mom.
But I love that Jesus did not change the name of Mary. There's been so many instances where when people are healed from something, or when they've been transformed by God, that the name changes. Just like Sarah, her name was changed to Sarah, and that was from princess to the mother of nations after she got healed from her barrenness, or when it came from Abram to Abraham. But I think that the reason why God didn't change Mary's name, but he just called her name, was because he was calling women to purpose. And the reason why I say that is because I think it was 2 weeks ago when Kelly was basically talking about the parallels between Eve and Mary. And that did something to me, because it's just like, sin entered into the world through a woman, through the rebelliousness of a woman. And Mary's name actually meant bitterness and rebellion. And I think that God was showing us that this is what happened when sin entered into the world, and entered into the world by a woman. But I'm going to show you what I can do through my grace. So I think that it was a reminder to everyone that this is what I can do. This is what my grace can do through you. Yes, Mary used to be the one to carry 7 demons, but now she's going to be the one to carry my word. So when you see her, you're going to see me. Yes, Brea, the one who used to carry, shame and guilt and anxiety and depression. Now she's carrying my word. Now she's doing a Bible study. Jayna, the one who used to be an introvert, now she's carrying my word. Now she's writing blogs, and she's being used by Jesus. So know that when you see them, you see me.
That's good. That's good. So John 20:17, Jesus says to Mary, "Touch me not." So my question was, okay, but why? And I imagine that was Mary's question too as well. Why? I have this close relationship with you. I just lost you. I'm seeing you right now in front of me. Why can't I touch you? So I found that in John 20:17, the Greek word translated to touch is hapto, which in addition to touch means to cling to fasten to lay hold of. It was also the word used to refer to sexual intercourse, which may be why some scholars speculate that Mary and Jesus were married, or were lovers in the sexual way, not the way that we're referring to. But as I was researching more about that phrase, he's basically saying, don't cling to me, which suggests that Mary was already touching him. So he's basically saying, like, no, get off, not don't touch me, but no, like, don't cling to me. So naturally, like I said, if someone close to you passed and they're now in front of you, you would want to embrace them. So I'm sure Mary is very confused, like, why can I not touch you? And he gives the answer, for I'm not yet ascended into my Father, but I imagine she's still like, okay, but still, why? I'm not understanding. Because in John 20:27, he offers himself to Thomas and says, reach hither thy finger and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand and thrust it into my side. And so it's like, he's telling Mary, the one that was so close to him, that you can't touch me, get off me, chick. But the doubter, you're offering, inviting yourself to him. So those encounters are very different. So we know that Jesus already knew that Mary was going to do that, and he already knew that Thomas was going to doubt, which is why he offered himself to him. We said after Mary clings to him, he says, no, go tell. Mary goes and tells the disciples. The disciples see him for himself, and then they come back and tell Thomas, and Thomas is like, no, unless I see the holes myself, I'm not going to believe. And so I'm like, okay, well, why would Jesus have these two different encounters with Mary and Thomas? And I see that he was trying to lay a new foundation for him. So basically, Christ was saying, I myself have elevated. I've gone through death and had to be buried and had to be resurrected and now soon to be ascended. I also need you to elevate in your relationship with me. So I'm not going to be walking on this earth with you, talking with you, and having this relationship anymore. Our relationship will still continue, but it's going to look different. So I have to lay this new foundation for how our relationship is going to continue. So Jesus didn't have to invite Mary to touch him, because she knew her master when he said her voice, so she embraced him. So for her, the faith lesson for this new relationship was, Mary, I need you to have faith to let me go. Our relationship is going to be different. It's going to continue. It's not going to be tangible. So you're not going to be able to touch me, but you'll be able to touch me. You'll be able to feel me on the inside, and you'll be able to feel my presence. And Thomas's faith lesson was, I need you to increase your faith, because shame on you for having to see me in order to believe, but blessed are they who cannot see but believe. And so that was the lesson, I believe, that Jesus was trying to teach them, and why he had those two different encounters, because Mary needed faith to let go. Thomas needed faith to increase his faith so that he didn't have to see Jesus in order to believe that he was truly risen. But still, I can imagine how hard that must have been for Mary, even after that, him having told her that he had to be ascended to his Father. And it's like, I still don't understand why. I just got you back. Why do you have to leave me again? And so I'm sure Mary felt like she was losing. She didn't feel like she was gaining anything, not realizing that his death meant life for her. So she thought she was still losing something. And she was probably like, is this Holy Spirit dude really going to be just as good? Is he really going to comfort me the way that you do? Is he really going to be my friend the way that you do? Is he going to be there for me? Is he going to listen to me? So I'm sure that she still had her doubts and still had her fears, but she did as he instructed, go tell the others. So Jesus was saying, when I'm not going to be physically here, the true test of your faith is to see if they believe me when they can't see. So I need you to tell the others, and their faith is going to be what elevates them. So sometimes what we see as a loss is really a gain. God is just saying, trust me. I know it seems hard. I know it doesn't feel right, but I just need you to trust me through this. I know you feel like you need me to give you something tangible to see, but if I always give you something tangible, that means your faith is weak. So I need you to elevate. I need you to trust that which you cannot see. So we see so many beautiful lessons that we can get through Mary's relationship with Christ and her faith that she had.
That's good. So going back to the verse John 20:17, where Jesus tells Mary not to touch her, I believe that God was introducing a new role for Mary and a new role for women, because basically he was telling Mary, listen, you have work to do. You can't touch me, and I still have not yet ascended to the Father, and I need my spirit to go down, because it's no longer about you. It's going to be about everyone that you come in contact with, everyone who believes and wants to receive me. I'm going to be able to do that, but I have to ascend. And I know the curse said that your husband will rule over you, but when I died, I was resurrected. I broke the curse, and now you have a part to play. You have a new role. You can't stay here. You have a new responsibility because of your relationship. And I think that he was reminding us that if you have a relationship, you have a responsibility. I think that a lot of us, sometimes we go around and we think that because it's all good, like we just use our relationship with Jesus for ourselves. And there's so many, what I feel like, are obese Christians because we just take, but we don't give. And God is looking for an exchange. He's saying, Mary, you can't hold on to me. You have to go and do something with what I've given you. You have to go and do something with my word. And I feel like even here we hit so much good, hefty, word. But if we don't do with it, what is it doing any good? We need to do something with the word that we're given. When it comes to obese people, the more you eat, listen, eventually you're going to die. You just be eating all the time. Like, you need to do something with it. You're going to blow up. But you need to do something with the word that God has given you. That's what God is calling us to do. And I believe that that's what he was saying to women. That's what he was saying to Mary. Listen, you have a new role. You have a new assignment. You need to go and tell. You need to tell people about this word that I'm giving you. Also, sorry, y'all, I forgot where I was.
It's all right. So take your time.
But also, I just feel like sometimes we get comfortable with just letting our relationship with God be for ourselves, because we have so much power, especially as women. Kelly taught us on Sunday that we're literally wells. We have living water on the inside of us. It says, out of our belly shall flow rivers of living water. And we're not just on this earth just to, bear children or, have life physically on the inside of us, but to have life spiritually on the inside of us as well. And I think this did something for me, because as a new mother, sometimes I feel like women, we can get caught up in the roles that we play in that, while we're in them. And I think this taught me that you're more than just a mother, you're more than just a friend, you're more than just a wife, you're more than just, what people tell you that you are, but you're what I'm calling you. You're what I say that you are. And you have a role that is so bigger than yourself. So I think this was just a reminder for me, and I hope it was a reminder to you that as women, we're so capable of so many things, and we're capable to do so many things well, and we have a purpose that is outside of ourselves. So we need to definitely just be able to walk out the purpose that we're called to do.
11 through 13 and Acts 1, 10 through 11, I was kind of seeing some parallels and similarities between the two. So John 20, 11 through 13. But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him. So in this scene, we see the two angels saying to Mary, Why weepest thou? So Mary is mourning in this scene. She is thinking that she has lost rather than gained, like we said earlier, forgetting that his death meant life for us. But in Acts 1, 10 through 11, it says, And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven, as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus which is taken up from you into heaven shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. So here, when we see the two angels again, it's no longer a scene of mourning, but a scene of rejoicing. And even though it does not say that Mary herself was at the ascension, I assume she probably heard from the disciples who were there when they had gone up into the upper room, because it says in Acts 1:14, these all continued with one accord in prayer and supplication with the women, and Mary the mother of Jesus, and with his brethren. So I bet Mary was included in those women. So I'm sure she probably heard from the disciples that, hey, the same way he left us, he's coming back. So this is not a mourning. In the scene before, where the two angels were asking her, Why are you weeping? Why are you crying? She was mourning in that scene. But in this scene, she's being comforted that her Lord, her Savior, her Master is coming back for his bride, which is us, all of those who believed. So Mary's relationship with Christ closely resembles what our relationship with Christ looks like. And so we didn't want to make this sound like a love story, but in a sense it kind of is. We see that Mary was a lover for Christ, the passion that she had, how much she adored him, how much nothing could keep her from him. And that is the same type of passion, the love that we should have for Christ. And the way that she mourned for him when he was gone, and how she I'm sure it was expecting his return, that great affection that she had. She wanted that to continue with the one that she loved when he returned. So we should have that same desire to be with Christ.